What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Noah Gray here, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Josh's channel and check out showmefootball.com for more.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And today I wanted to talk about more wide receiver stuff coming out of Chiefs training camp. I wanted to do my wide receiver depth chart projections for the 2023 to 2024 season and kind of give you guys my thoughts so far as training camp has progressed a little bit and we've seen what some of the receivers can do. So obviously I haven't attended training camp this year, so I haven't watched every practice from beginning to end, but I've consumed a lot of coverage of training camp and I've watched all the clips, and I feel like I have a pretty good idea on where things stand with the Chiefs wide receivers. And I know it's a position that everyone is looking at because it's a position that has a lot of potential, but it's also a lot of unknown. And that's kind of scaring people a little bit, especially since they missed on DeAndre Hopkins. And now everyone's looking even closer at the wide receiver position to see who's going to emerge and if the Chiefs have all the guys they need for this to be a successful season for the wide receiver group. There's also been a lot of development that I wanted to talk about when it comes to the Chiefs wide receivers over the past couple weeks. A couple things that happened. One, Kadarius Toney got injured. He tweaked his knee and ended up having surgery to repair a torn meniscus, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But then also, John Ross, who a lot of people thought was going to fight from one of the last receiver spots on this team, ended up abruptly retiring from football out of nowhere. And Andy Reid even said that he was shocked and didn't see it coming at all, and that John Ross didn't really say much on his way out. But I think when a player abruptly retires like that, it most likely means that they saw the writing on the wall and that John Ross was not going to make this team anyway. So I wanted to start by saying that because I know that news was a little surprising. And even though John Ross has bounced around the league a little bit, he's still relatively young. So it came as a bit of a shock just because of that. But it's not surprising when you consider the fact that John Ross probably wasn't going to make this team. But let's get back to Kadarius Toney real quick. So this news isn't really all that shocking because we knew Kadarius Toney had health issues, right? But it's especially concerning because a lot of whether or not the Chiefs are going to have enough at wide receiver this season hinges on the health of Kadarius Toney. We heard reports this past offseason from guys like James Palmer of NFL Network that the Chiefs view Kadarius Toney as their number one wide receiver. And we all can agree that Kadarius Toney has the talent to be the Kansas City Chiefs' number one wide receiver. I don't think you'll find many people arguing that. But the health is such a huge concern. Kadarius Toney has not been able to stay healthy consistently since he's been in the NFL. And him having a meniscus surgery, I believe on the same knee, if I heard this correctly. So at first, Adam Schefter misreported that Kadarius Toney had surgery earlier this offseason. That was not true. He had surgery last offseason when he was still with the Giants, as I think what the report was supposed to be. And then, of course, he tweaked his knee at the beginning of training camp, and then he got surgery on that about a week ago now. And so this is pretty significant because it seems like Toney is going to miss the rest of training camp and may not even play in the first game. He also could be out for a significant stretch of the first part of the season. And honestly, when it comes to Kadarius Toney, when he's healthy, I'll just go ahead and say it now. He's wide receiver one. Like I said, I'm going to project the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiver depth chart. He's wide receiver one. Just by default, I think he's wide receiver one. The caveat is obviously health, though. But anytime Kadarius Toney is healthy, I'm putting him up there as Chiefs wide receiver one. I think the Chiefs view him that way. He obviously has the talent, and anytime the guy touches the field, he seems to produce. Even in the very limited amount of snaps he played for the Chiefs just this past season, he made an impact when he was on the field. I mean, look at the Super Bowl. He did not play that much in the Super Bowl. He played like 7 snaps and scored a touchdown on 2 of them. So extremely productive. Chiefs wide receiver one, but the health is a major concern. And what I was going to say about Kadarius Toney is that honestly, at this point, I really don't care how much Kadarius Toney plays in the regular season. If you have to keep him out, keep him out. I just want the dude to be healthy when it comes time for the postseason. The guy that I expect to be number 2 on the depth chart come regular season is, of course, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Now, I'm going to preface by saying that I could very easily see another wide receiver on the Chiefs overtaking MVS at some point next season. But it's going to start out with MVS being the number 2. And there's a few obvious reasons for that. One, he's most familiar with the system than anybody else, any other receiver on the Chiefs right now. Secondly, he's proven more than anybody else in the Chiefs wide receiver room as things stand. The Chiefs did not win the AFC Championship game without MVS last season. MVS was a very steady presence. He's one of Mahomes' favorite targets. Him and Mahomes have quickly developed a really good chemistry with each other. And he's going to be a guy that gets a ton of deep balls, as he does every single year. And the same way that he did in Green Bay when he was with Aaron Rodgers, that's what he does. He has a very specific role as well. And he's going to be wide receiver 2. I'm not thrilled about it because with Toney being injured, that kind of means he's actually wide receiver 1. And I'm not thrilled about it because MVS isn't necessarily wide receiver 1 material. But again, I think you could see some change when it comes to who is where in the pecking order because the Chiefs have a couple other younger, more exciting prospects like Sky Moore and Rasheed Rice, who I'll get to coming up. But for right now, MVS is your wide receiver 2, and he's also made a lot of plays so far in training camp, and I think the chemistry is only going to continue to get better between MVS and Mahomes. All right, next up is wide receiver 3, and I think a lot of you guys are going to be surprised by this, and I'm going to say right now, this is another one that's subject to change, and I think it probably will change, but again, when the season starts, this is what I expect. And that is Richie James, the free agent acquisition coming over from the New York Giants. He just seems to quickly be building up a rapport with Patrick Mahomes as well. And the thing I really like about Richie James is that, he's a seasoned veteran, and he really broke out for the Giants last year, was one of the better receivers in the league at getting open and being reliable on third down. I said this in my last video with Michael Darcy from KC Sports Report, but Richie James is a really steady presence. I think he's someone that could very easily get 400 or 500 yards this year for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think his ceiling is relatively low, but he's got a high floor. Again, I'm going to get to Sky Moore and Rasheed Rice and those kind of guys, and I think they have a real shot to overtake Richie James and potentially MVS by the time the season ends. I don't know, but those guys have a lot of potential. I think Richie James has an edge on those guys right now, though, just because he is a veteran. He's been around the league a little bit, also spent some time with the San Francisco 49ers, and he's a guy that I think is going to be one of Patrick Mahomes' favorite targets on third down this season. He also is going to have a very niche role. I don't expect anything too prolific from Richie James, and I'm not going to be shocked if he's wide receiver 4 or 5 by the season's end. And honestly, if everything goes right, that's probably what should happen. But when the season starts, I expect Richie James to be involved heavily. Then wide receiver 4, I'm going to go ahead and say Rasheed Rice, who I think has been arguably the star of training camp so far. Every single day, the guy has been making highlight catches. He's probably the biggest story of training camp, right next to Justin Ross, who is another guy we're going to get to a little bit later. But Rasheed Rice, the route running looks really good so far. The hands look really good so far. I really love the way the guy moves. When you watch his highlights at SMU and you look at his size, you think, okay, this is a guy that can go up and get it. And he can. And he makes a lot of, high pointed catches and all that cool stuff. But I even saw a clip earlier today of them trying him out on a jet sweep, and he has really deceptive speed, and he moves really well for a guy his size. I kind of forgot since the whole draft process just how well Rasheed Rice moves for a guy that's, above 6 feet. He's a pretty big guy, and he just looks really athletic, and he looks really explosive with the ball in his hands. I'm excited to see what Rasheed Rice can do. I said in my video with Michael Darcy that I don't know if Rasheed Rice is going to have a huge role in 2023, but the Chiefs are going to need something out of him just because the receiver core is depending on it. The team lost Juju in free agency. Kadarius Toney is already injured. Rasheed Rice probably gives them the closest thing they had to Juju from last year. So they're going to need him to step up a little bit. I don't know how good of a rookie season he's going to have, but day by day, I'm starting to become more sold on Rasheed Rice really being a factor in 2023. And currently, I do have him ahead of Sky Moore right now. Not that Sky Moore has had a bad training camp, not that I don't think Sky Moore can contribute, but between Sky Moore and Rasheed Rice, I think Rasheed Rice has true wide receiver one potential. I don't believe the same for Sky Moore. But Rasheed Rice continues to be my training camp MVP from everything that I've been able to gather. And I love the way that he looks so far. I know I've used the word trust a lot and kind of the chemistry with Mahomes with these other guys, but Rasheed Rice is another guy that I think has just developed instant chemistry with Mahomes, and that was one of the big reasons that the Chiefs drafted him is because they sent Mahomes down to Texas to throw to a bunch of receiver prospects, and Mahomes liked Rasheed Rice the most out of all of them. And I think that chemistry was already being built before the Chiefs even took Rice in the draft, and you can clearly see that has translated into training camp. So I really like what Rasheed Rice has brought to the table so far. He really excites me. Then I think right behind him, you have to go with Sky Moore at number 5. And a lot of people might think I'm crazy for saying this. Like, Sky Moore is wide receiver 5. But that's why I keep saying all these are subject to change. I think if everything goes correctly, Sky Moore should probably end up in the top 3 of most productive Chiefs wide receivers. But when the season starts out, he's going to be wide receiver 5. And I think this is a building up process of Sky Moore. I don't think he's just going to burst onto the scene. I've, said it 100 times with Sky Moore. You look at guys that have had less than 300 receiving yards in their rookie season. They really don't go on to burst onto the scene in their second season. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible for Sky Moore to have a really good sophomore season in the NFL, and that because he didn't really get all that much play in his rookie season that he's not going to be good. But I think there was some reason as to why this guy couldn't beat out Justin Watson for snaps last year. And when most of his production came in games where everybody else was hurt or there's just no other options. This guy made some plays last year, yes. He also struggled to get on the field, and I think there was a reason for that. And I think Sky Moore is a guy that's still learning the wide receiver position, and it's just going to take some time. But what I really like about Sky Moore is that he seems to have a knack for getting open, which is kind of strange when you consider why he struggled so much to get onto the field last year, because every time he was on the field, he was a guy that had one of the better yards per route run statistics on the Chiefs. He was a guy that seemed to always be getting open, but the targets weren't really there. The extended opportunity wasn't really there. I don't know why. I think there's some reason for it. Andy Reid's obviously not going to tell everybody. But I do like Sky Moore because he has that ability to get open. I also like that he has really reliable hands. He has really big hands for a guy that's not that big. And so I think he can be a reliable number 2 or 3 for the Chiefs this season. Will he reach that ceiling that I have for him? I don't know. But like I said, I think he's going to be a guy that maybe starts out slow at the beginning of the season. He's going to be towards the bottom of the depth chart, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but he's going to have to work his way up because I think guys like MVS and Richie James have earned their spots. And so it's going to be up to Sky Moore to overtake those guys. And then we're down to wide receivers 6 and 7. I don't know if the Chiefs are going to carry 7 receivers, but they're most certainly going to carry 6. And I think that the 6th one is most certainly going to be Justin Watson. At least I think so, because the Chiefs did sign him to a multi-year deal. I think they brought him back for a reason, and they do have a lot of trust in him. That's also another guy that Sky Moore is going to have to beat out for snaps because every single time it seemed like Sky Moore should have been getting snaps last year, they were giving those snaps to Justin Watson. So even though I have Justin Watson behind Sky Moore, that's why I put so much emphasis on the fact that I know it seems odd that Sky Moore is wide receiver 5, but he's going to have to show that he can overtake these other guys because, again, they've earned their spots, or the Chiefs staff has shown in the past that they have more trust in those guys. But I digress. So I think Justin Watson is a lock to make this roster, which means, who's going to be wide receiver 7? And I think this is where the Justin Ross hype comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Justin Ross has shown us enough in camp to make me think that he's going to make this team. The Chiefs social media team knows exactly what they're doing with Justin Ross. They put out clips almost every single day of him making some sort of highlight catch. He had like some crazy one-handed catch in practice the other day. He is absolutely abusing some of the Chiefs DBs in camp on some of the drills and scrimmages. And I think there's enough there with Justin Ross. The question always was with him, is he going to stay healthy? But the talent was always there. And I always said, Chiefs Kingdom, in order to be embraced by Chiefs fans, it seems like you have to take some sort of hardline stance with Justin Ross. Is he going to be good or is he not going to make the team? And I think a lot of people felt like they wanted to dump cold water on the Justin Ross hype. And I understand being cautious, but people were acting like he had zero chance to make this team. And I was always a guy that was saying, hey, he has the talent, but let Justin Ross be Justin Ross. And if he makes the team by the end of training camp and preseason, then I'll start to believe in him a little bit. But I've seen enough in training camp that makes me believe he is going to make this team and he has potential to contribute next season. So I think the Chiefs are going to carry 7 receivers because Justin Ross is going to force them to. He's too good to not let make the team. And if you try to cut him and keep him on the practice squad, I think some other team would pick him up. You can't do that. And I also think because Kadarius Toney is such a question mark when it comes to his health, it's going to force the Chiefs to carry 7 receivers. There's just you don't have as much proven production. You don't have as many proven commodities this year in this wide receiver core. And so because of all those reasons combined, I think the Chiefs carry 7 receivers with number 7 being Justin Ross. And so those are my feelings on the Chiefs depth chart as training camp progresses and we're inching closer to that first preseason game. As far as all the other guys, I think they're on the outside looking in. Cornell Powell, Amir Smith-Marset, Nico Remigio, I think they're all on the outside looking in. They're all practice squad candidates. Speaking of Nico Remigio, though, I will say that he's earned a lot of praise so far in camp. I think if the Chiefs end up releasing him, he'll have a chance to catch on elsewhere, or the Chiefs will keep him on the practice squad, of course, if he clears everything. But those are my thoughts on the Chiefs wide receiver core so far, this far into training camp. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you agree, disagree with me? How would you rank the Chiefs wide receiver depth chart heading into this preseason and 2023 regular season? Let me know down in the comments. Did any of my answers surprise you? Would love to hear from you guys. But with all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com. And I will see you all in the next one. Go Chiefs!